The bridge of the Starship Prometheus burned with emergency lights as alarms screamed through every corridor. Captain Kira Vance gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She was only 26 years old, the youngest captain in the United Earth Fleet, and now she faced the worst crisis any human had ever encountered in deep space. The ashfall had come without warning. A massive cloud of cosmic debris, left over from an ancient supernova, had swept through this sector of space like a hungry beast. It destroyed everything in its path. 3 alien civilizations had already lost their fleets to this great death. Their distress signals had gone silent one by one, leaving only static and fear. Now the Prometheus carried the last survivors. 2,000 souls from 4 different species, all packed into a ship designed for 800 humans. The air recyclers struggled. The food supplies ran low, and the ashfall cloud was closing in fast. "Captain, the debris field is expanding," said Lieutenant Marcus Cole from his navigation station. His dark face was covered in sweat. "We have maybe 3 hours before it catches us." Kira closed her eyes for just a moment. She could feel the weight of every life on this ship pressing down on her shoulders. The alien passengers did not trust her. Why would they? Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only made first contact 15 years ago. Most species saw them as children playing at being adults. But there was no one else. The senior officers had died when the first wave of debris struck the ship. The experienced captains of the Allied vessels had gone down with their ships. Only Kira remained, a young woman who had been promoted too fast because the war with the collective had killed too many good officers. She opened her eyes and stood up. Her crew looked at her with hope and fear mixed together on their faces. She had to be strong for them. "All department heads, meet me in the conference room in 5 minutes," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. She had learned long ago to hide her fear. "We are not dying today." The conference room was crowded. Human officers sat next to alien survivors who had held rank in their own fleets. There was Admiral Vex, a tall insectoid creature from the Montari Empire. His compound eyes watched Kira with something that might have been doubt or curiosity. Beside him sat Commander Vila, a blue-skinned Telleron whose people were famous for their logic and cold calculation. 3 other species had sent representatives too, all of them older and more experienced than Kira. "The situation is simple," Kira began. She pulled up a holographic map of the space around them. "The ashfall moves faster than us. We cannot outrun it. We cannot go through it. Our shields would fail in minutes. Then we are dead," Admiral Dex said. His mandibles clicked with each word. "I do not understand why we waste time with meetings when we could spend our final hours in peace." "Because I refuse to accept death as the only option," Kira replied. She zoomed in on a section of the map. "There is a nebula here, the Vendra Nebula. Our sensors show it lies just at the edge of the ashfall's current path." Commander Vila leaned forward. "The Vendra Nebula is highly unstable. Its electromagnetic fields would destroy our navigation systems. No ship has ever survived passage through it. No alien ship has survived it," Kira said. "But humans have different technology. Our ships were built for exploration of dangerous space. We expect things to go wrong, so we build systems that can handle failure." The aliens exchanged looks of confusion. Kira understood their doubt. Their civilizations were old and advanced. They had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology until it was elegant and efficient. But elegant technology was also fragile. It expected to work perfectly in perfect conditions. Human technology was ugly by comparison. It was rough and redundant, and sometimes held together with tape and hope. But it worked when everything else failed. Because humans had grown up on a dangerous world full of disasters, they had learned to plan for chaos. "I propose we enter the nebula," Kira continued. "We shut down all sensitive systems and navigate by manual control. Old technology. Mechanical backups." The kind of flying our ancestors did when they first left Earth. This is madness, Admiral Beck said. You would trust our lives to primitive methods? Kira met his compound eyes without flinching. I would trust our lives to the methods that kept humans alive through ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We are a stubborn species, Admiral. We do not die easy. The room fell silent. The aliens looked at each other, communicating in ways Kira could not understand. Finally, Commander Vila spoke. What do you need from us? Kira allowed herself a small smile. I need your people to trust mine. And I need every engineer who knows how to work with their hands. The next 2 hours were controlled chaos. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, installing manual overrides and backup systems. The work was rough and ugly, but it was fast. Kira walked through the ship, talking to crew and passengers alike. She answered questions and calmed fears and solved problems one by one. She found the youngest passengers in the cargo bay that had been converted to a shelter. Children from 4 different species played together, somehow finding common ground despite their differences. A small Monterey child approached her with curiosity. Are you the captain? The child asked. Kira knelt down to meet the child at eye level. I am. My father says humans are too young to lead. He says your species is like a baby trying to walk. Kira smiled. Maybe he is right. But babies learn fast. And sometimes, when the adults are too scared to move, the baby is the one who takes the first step. The child seemed to think about this. Then it reached out with one of its many limbs and touched Kira's hand. I hope you walk well, Captain. I will try, Kira said. I promise I will try. She returned to the bridge as the Prometheus approached the nebula. The swirling clouds of gas and energy filled the view screen with colors that had no names in any language. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All systems ready for manual operation, Lieutenant Cole reported. Navigation computers are shut down. We are flying blind. Kira took her seat. She felt the fear try to rise up in her chest, but she pushed it down. She thought about all the humans who had faced impossible odds before her. The first sailors who crossed unknown oceans. The first pilots who flew through storms. The first astronauts who trusted their lives to rockets full of fire. They had all been afraid, but they had flown anyway. Take us in, she ordered. The Prometheus entered the nebula. Everything went wrong immediately. The electromagnetic fields hit the ship like a physical force. Lights flickered. Consoles sparked and died. The artificial gravity stuttered, and people grabbed onto whatever they could reach. But the manual systems held. The mechanical backups worked. Human hands guided the ship through chaos, using nothing but skill and determination. Kira stood at the front of the bridge, giving orders with a calm voice that betrayed none of her fear. She watched the nebula through the viewport, reading its patterns the way her ancestors had read the stars. The swirling gases moved in currents, like rivers in the sky. She began to understand their flow. Port thrusters, 20%, she called out. Compensate for the electromagnetic pull from that cluster. The ship lurched but held course. Behind them, the ashfall cloud approached the nebula's edge. It hit the unstable energy fields and began to break apart. The ancient debris that had killed so many ships was being destroyed by the very thing that threatened the Prometheus. Captain, Lieutenant Cole said, his voice filled with wonder. The ashfall. It is disintegrating. Kira allowed herself one moment of hope. But they were not safe yet. The nebula still raged around them, and they had hours of dangerous flight ahead. Focus on the path ahead, she said. We are not done yet. Through the long hours that followed, Kira guided her ship like a conductor leading an orchestra through the most difficult symphony ever written. Every decision had to be made in seconds. Every mistake could mean death. But she made no mistakes. The aliens watched her with growing amazement. This young human, this child by their standards, was doing what their most experienced captains could not. She was navigating by instinct and wisdom, turning chaos into patterns that she could understand and use. Admiral Vex came to stand beside her command chair. His compound eyes reflected the swirling colors of the nebula. "I have commanded ships for longer than your species has had fire," he said quietly, "but I have never seen leadership like this." "How do you remain so calm?" Kira did not look away from the viewport. "I am not calm, Admiral. I am terrified. But humans learned long ago that fear is just information. It tells us that danger is near. It does not tell us to give up. A strange philosophy, a human philosophy. We evolved as prey animals on a dangerous world. Fear was our constant companion. So we learned to use it instead of being controlled by it." Admiral Vex was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that no Montari had ever done to a human before. He bowed his great insectoid head in respect. "Perhaps," he said, "your species is not as young as we believed." The Prometheus emerged from the Vendra Nebula 12 hours later. The ship was battered and scarred, but it was intact. Every passenger, every crew member, every child had survived. Behind them, the ashfall cloud had been completely destroyed by the nebula's unstable energies. Kira allowed herself to collapse into her chair. The adrenaline that had kept her going finally faded, and exhaustion hit her like a wave. But she was smiling. Lieutenant Cole turned to her with tears in his eyes. "Captain, we made it. We actually made it." "We did," Kira said. Together. The days that followed were filled with repairs and recovery. The Prometheus limped toward the nearest friendly port, carrying its precious cargo of survivors. Word of their escape spread across the galactic networks. The story of the young human captain who had guided her ship through impossible chaos became legend. When they finally reached port, representatives from dozens of species were waiting. They wanted to meet the woman who had done what no one else could. But Kira had no interest in fame or glory. She walked through the crowds with her head held high, but her manner humble. She shook hands and claws and tentacles with aliens who once dismissed humans as primitive newcomers. Now they looked at her with respect and wonder. Commander Vila found her on the observation deck, watching the stars. "Your species continues to surprise us," the Telleron said. "Our calculations said survival was impossible. Yet here we are." Kira smiled. "That is the thing about humans. We are very bad at knowing when something is impossible. So we try anyway. A logical flaw, a survival advantage. The universe is full of impossible things. Someone has to be stubborn enough to do them." Commander Vila considered this. In her long life, she had met many species. Some were wise, some were powerful, some were ancient beyond measure. But none of them had the strange combination of traits that made humans so effective. They were young and inexperienced, yet they learned faster than anyone. They were afraid of everything, yet they feared nothing. They were fragile creatures from a harsh world, and that harshness had made them strong. "The Galactic Council will want to hear your testimony," Vela said. "They will want to understand how you survived. I will tell them what I know," Kira replied. "But the truth is simple. We survived because we refused to give up. Because we worked together. Because we took the impossible and broke it down into smaller problems that we could solve one at a time." "That is wisdom," Vila said. Kira laughed softly. "That is just being human." Months later, Kira stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. They had gathered to honor her and to learn from her experience. The Ashfall crisis had shown them something important. Humanity was not just a young species stumbling through the galaxy. They were survivors, adapters, problem solvers. The council voted that day to give humans a permanent seat at their table, not because of their technology or their military power, but because of their wisdom. The wisdom to face chaos and find order within it. The wisdom to take fear and turn it into fuel. The wisdom to lead when all hope seemed lost. Kira accepted the honor with grace. But in her heart, she knew that she was not special. Every human carried this wisdom within them. It was the gift of their harsh and beautiful homeworld. It was the legacy of every ancestor who had faced death and chosen to fight anyway. As she left the council chamber, she looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited. New chaos that would need to be tamed. New impossible situations that would require stubborn hope and creative thinking. And humanity would be ready, because that was what they did. They took the chaos of the universe and turned it into stories of survival. They took the darkness of space and filled it with light. The young captain walked toward her ship, ready for whatever came next. Behind her, the galaxy watched with new respect for the species that would not accept defeat. The species that turned chaos into order. The species called humanity. And somewhere in the endless black, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was smiling at the stubborn little creatures who refused to stay down, who kept getting up no matter how many times they fell, who looked at the impossible and said, simply and with complete confidence, "Watch me." The Prometheus lifted off from the station, its engines burning bright against the void. Captain Kira Vance sat in her command chair, surrounded by a crew that trusted her completely. They had faced death together and won. They had proved that youth was not weakness, that fear was not failure, and that wisdom came not from age, but from the courage to keep learning. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward new adventures. And in the great records of the galaxy, a new chapter was written. The chapter of humanity, the chapter of hope, the chapter that would never end.